So, one of the hardest lessons that I've personally had to learn is that people don't accept reality when it's not what they want reality to be. And I'm seeing this with the current situation. I have been warning about World War III for the last, I want to say like a year. It was really sort of when I started ramping up uh, because I'm looking at a situation in a vulnerable community where there are people who are going to be stuck in homes with abusers during this wartime period, this economic disaster, you know. And so the way that I typically present the information is if you had known COVID was coming ahead of time, what decisions would you have made? And like, then do that, make those decisions. And the other thing that I'm learning is that people really shy away from preparation and they see it as being like negative and disempowering. And I don't, the reason I'm doing a video is because sometimes in writing, the tone is different. And I really like, I want to sort of convey like a helpful tone here. When you are identifying a situation and then making decisions to address whatever that situation is, that's that's empowering. That's you being able to take action on your own behalf, even if it's a little bit. You know, if you're in an abuse dynamic and you are trapped with the abuser, but then let's say every time you go to the store, you get a little bit of cash back. You know, you ask the you beep boop beep, you do like $5 or $10 cash back, and then you put that cash in a safe place over time. Every little grocery store shopping trip, so that it's not out of the norm of the trip, but you are able to sock away a little bit at a time that the abuser doesn't know about. You put it in a safe place. Enough doing that over time, you might be able to save up more money than you realize. You know, if you make a grocery store trip, let's say every week or every 2 weeks, and you're able to get $5 aside every single time, you know, that could be anywhere from $10 to $20 a month. And if you do that for all of the months that you live with this person, you might have something close to a couple $100s. Now, is that like life changing amounts of money? No, but can you buy a bus ticket? Maybe you can get a hotel room. You can get an emergency, you know, ride out of there. You're in a better position than if you had no money. You have a little bit more options than you had before. And every little bit is better than no bit. So, you know, when we're looking at these disaster scenarios, whether it's World War III or, oh no, I'm trapped with an abuser, how do I navigate this? Every little bit of information that you can use to make better decisions. And I don't want to even say better, more informed decisions, more effective decisions. Every little bit is helpful. Every little bit is going to be empowering. Like, how would it feel if you knew, okay, I've got $50. I've got it sewn into my blanket. You know, that's how they used to do it actually back in the old days. They would give a woman who was getting, you know, not all victims of abuse are women. There are male victims of abuse too, but like historically, at least in America, women in the family would give a new bride like a blanket and they would sew money into the blanket that only the bride knew about. It was not for the husband to know. And that way there was this like extra money in the event of an emergency or if he turned out to be abusive and she needed to get away or something. So you can, you know, take your little money and you sew it into something or whatever it is that makes sense for you in your situation. But any little bit puts future you in a better position and gives future you more options than you would have had. So I grew up in Florida and I grew up in a hurricane preparedness environment. Hurricanes are a normal feature. They happened all, very frequently on a devastating level. And you feel more secure if you have the food set aside, your emergency supplies, some batteries. Again, a little bit is better than nothing. And so, it's not supposed to make you feel overwhelmed. You just one foot in front of the other. Every little step you can do on your own behalf adds to your sense of empowerment. Instead of focusing on what you don't have and how bad things are and all the things that you can't do, you focus on what you can do, right? Like in any situation, you're going to have some element of choice. The worse the abuse is or the worse the situation is, obviously those choices get narrower. But even in the worst case, you do have choices. They're not great choices, maybe. I don't even know if I'd recommend this book because honestly, like I loved the book, but it could be very triggering for victims of abuse. So, Viktor Frankl, he wrote Man's Search for Meaning, and he was in the Holocaust. He was in a concentration camp, and he was like the only member of his family who wasn't murdered. And so he was a logotherapist, like kind of a psychologist, and he wrote a book when he came out of there. And he was talking about how even in that environment, people had the ability to make choices for themselves, to make their experience like worse or better. And so the idea is a good idea, and it has foundation from somebody who's credibly gone through kind of like the worst horrific experience, right? Like that a human being can go through. But when you're in certain phases of abuse, when you hear that information, it makes you feel as if you're being judged for not doing enough. And so that's why I'm not recommending the book. What I do want to say, though, is that tool is available if you need it. I'm not saying if you don't do it, there's something wrong with you. It is completely normal and okay and valid to be overwhelmed by bad things. But if you are within yourself, like, I can't function like this anymore, I have to do something different. And you go, okay, how can I reapproach the situation? Just know that that is a tool that you can use. You can decide, okay, what choice can I make here that I can make for myself, no matter how small it is? And it might just be that you are making the choice to never treat another person the way you're being treated. That might be the choice that you make. And if you are in a concentration camp like environment or fascism or whatever it is, if you make like a Peter Mellark decision to go down as who you are, and that no one can take away your character, your identity, your personhood. Like they might be able to take your life or do awful, horrible things. But if the only decision you can make in that environment is that I'm not going to become a monster, I'm going to be me, that's valid. 100%. And then also, if you're in that position of you're like, oh no, I'm making the decision to do whatever it is I need to do to survive, that's another kind of valid decision. Although the moral injury from that is very overwhelming, and a lot of survivors really struggle with it because you have to live with it for the rest of your life. So, these are significant ethical conundrums that people who are in these horrific environments have to make. I was making these choices as a kid, and I did not do great. I did not make my best choices. And so I carry a lot of residual shame and guilt for like some of the things that I was doing to just survive. And so as an adult, I look back and I go, well, 7. Um, but I remember making that choice. So this is not to shame anybody, but just to like help us think through, in a situation, in a scenario, what are my options here? What can I choose for myself that makes me feel empowered to exist in this situation? And so anyway, as we are coming into this time period of an escalation of war into actual World War III, like we've been doing the ramping up period, but sometime within the next October to October, we're going to officially be kicking off into World War III. Like America's going to be involved. Hopefully we haven't invaded Greenland. Who knows? I always did wonder. I always did wonder how the Germans felt about their situation. And I didn't need like a direct experience. I was more thinking like from a philosophical perspective. So I wasn't like super wanting to do it myself, but here we are. That's okay. We're going to learn from it. I know for myself, after 25 years of being a registered Democrat, I have unregistered. I'm now unaffiliated because one, I don't want to be removed from voter rolls. And two, I don't want to be on a list if I can possibly help it. So that's one decision that I'm making for me and my family. We're also selling our house so that we are not in the neighborhood that we're in. We bought a very inexpensive house. Like we're not fancy. This is not, it's not a fancy house. It's a very lower income house. And I don't normally mind a drug dealer on the corner, but I don't know that I want to go into World War III with this drug dealer on the corner that I already know has broken into several houses. So we're like, time to go. Anyway, there's everybody's situation is going to be different, and we're going to have to think about, what will help me get through this tough period. And I just want to emphasize that if you're currently with an abusive person, whether it's your parent or a person that's your partner, you are probably not going to want to be there for when this all kicks off. Like if we're going through martial law, we're going through war, people are getting drafted, I don't know. If outside is not safe, then you want inside to be safe. If both inside and outside are unsafe, then you don't have any respite. You have no sanctuary. You have no place where you can just come inside and like relax and breathe, at least for a bit. So anyway, if had you known COVID was going to happen before it happened, what kind of choices would you make? And do what you can to kind of make those choices. And I know that it's hard to do it when you don't have a lot of money. So one thing I'm going to pin it to this video. I'm going to link to a YouTube video. There's this guy, he does like catastrophic meals for under $1. And I did not know about it's like bean curd, tofu skin, or something. This stuff is crazy cheap and the protein is crazy high. It's like even got calcium, a little bit of iron, lots of potassium. So it's like he's making meals with this. And I was like, that's like, and for him it was cheap. Now for me it was like $3.50 for 5.3 ounces. He was saying that and this is for officially a 2-person serving size. So mine's a little bit more expensive than that, but I just went to the closest place that I have that has it. But there are things we can do to cut expenses and start saving some money, making sure you have cash on hand, even if it's a little bit, like I said, $5 is better than no dollars, So we're just going to look at ways that we can live extremely inexpensively and also not make the mistake that I made at one point in my life where all I ate was rice. For months and months, it was cheap. But I was probably extremely nutritionally deficient. I was just trying to make it through to the best of my ability inexpensively. But I really should have added some beans to that rice. And beans are also extremely inexpensive. So anyway, there are things that we can do, choices that we can make. Every little bit is empowers you to be in a better position in the future. Anyway, I hope this makes sense, and I'll talk to you next time.